that day, he became a leader. Players have fought, ran for each other like I've seen no other club.
This is McClaren Performance.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the McClaren Performance Podcast, the podcast where I talk to my dad about everything football, performance psychology, and together we try and provide something useful for those of you listening. Now, just before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to thank everyone that I guess watched and liked and commented on our last episode. It's the first video, I think the one we've done first time on YouTube. Definitely most people have had actually listened, and surprisingly nobody gave us any stick, which I think was the biggest surprise to me. And everyone's feedback on it was just class, really, and it means a lot to us. So keep liking and commenting and asking questions as well. We both look through the comments. Well, I know I do anyway. I tell Dad what people have said. I'm not actually sure he knows what's going on. But yeah, ask questions, and at some point I think we'll get around to answer them in a later episode or whatever. But Dad, how are you this week? Have you been busy all this week? Anything in particular you've been busy with, or?
Yeah, we had busy last week, really. A couple of visits to Manchester, one day with FIFA and one day with the transfer forum, which Tony Sharkey invited me to and talk on that. And then a quick flight to Zurich, where we did another talk in the FIFA Museum.
Oh, yeah. Which
was a fantastic staging, a nice event, and just got back and watched Derby on Saturday. Caught up with Wayne. Hadn't seen him since the disappointment of going down, but saw him before the game. Was in good fettle, was looking very well, and experimented with the team on Saturday, looking towards next season. And he was very buoyant, very positive.
What are your first thoughts really on that Derby relegation? Obviously, it was that 1-0 loss to QPR that eventually led to them going down. But what were your first kind of thoughts of it happening, really?
You know, when those 21 points were deducted, and at the beginning of the season, we just said, well, that is relegation. But in events which we'll talk about and get the timeline through, he basically galvanized the club himself. I think since the point of Mel handing over the club to the administrators, I think the meeting that went on, and we'll talk about that, really galvanized the club. And the staff and the players, gave them a cause. And the rest, I've never seen, and I've really admired the way that he's gone about his job, but really admired the way that the team have played. I have never seen such a good team ever being relegated. And basically, with 21 points added, there'd be 52 points now. They'd be 17th in the table, well safe, and Birmingham and Reading would be fighting it out for that final third spot going down. So it's a little unfair, a little unjust, but I think it was inevitable. And the fans have been unbelievable from the first time really that Wayne took over. The fans were right behind him, and that's just grown and grown. And I think what epitomized the season for me was the last home game against Fulham, and I think that epitomized what Derby County was all about last season. Fantastic atmosphere, a full house, a big opponent, and I mean a big opponent in Fulham. And basically the fight of the team, the football of the team, the tactical nous of Wayne and the staff, won that game. And I have seen that so often that, I think from the start of him going in, taking the reins, he takes risks. He's not afraid to do that. He's brave. He's got courage. He learns quickly, and he learned from last season. And I think it's most important now that they keep Wayne, and because I think together and the players, they've created something special.
Yeah. Well, let's take it back a little bit, because I can't remember quite rightly, to be fair, when you started at Derby, what the situation was there, what time that was. What was the situation you faced when you kind of came in? I forget kind of the role it is, kind of more like a consultant role, really, wasn't it? What was the situation then?
I got a phone call from Mel Morris Sunday evening, and I think they just got beat by Bristol City. Cocu had gone, and he put 4 coaches in charge, not one, but put 4 in charge. And he just asked me, well, look, would I come in and be a bridge between himself, the 4 coaches, also oversee the 4 coaches, and just add some bit of advice, whatever, to the 4 coaches. So I went in. We played Middlesbrough on the Tuesday night. I remember it vividly. I met the 4 of the coaches. They were excellent in terms of they accepted the situation, and I just took a watching brief for the first game. And after the first game, the 3-0 defeat by Middlesbrough, Wayne played. Although the 4 coaches really got on well and worked well together, I just felt, and I said to Mel also, that I just feel the club needs one leader, one voice, one message, one decision maker. And I know it's a risk because he's the best player. I know it's a risk, but I recommended that Wayne take over as that leader, and the rest of the staff accept the positions and accept that Wayne is the boss, and to work together as they had done for the previous week and help Wayne to achieve the results that Derby wanted. And I've got to say, although it was difficult for the staff, some of them, they were fantastic. Liam, Justin were absolutely fantastic in handling that and and Shay as well. Shay Gibbon was the 4th one in handling that and saying that Wayne, you're the boss. You're the boss. You're the leader. One voice, one message, one person we follow. And it was, and what surprised me was that from that day on, when I had the conversation with Wayne, if you want to become a boss, this is the time. This is the opportunity. Now you've got to take it. Do you want to do that? If you do, then you must hang up your boots and focus on managing and being the boss, because that's what it takes.
I think one thing you brought into there, was like that. It's something I find in sport as well, and something I try and emphasize in lots of teams is hierarchy and having that structure in place. And I think when you say that there's 4 coaches and none of them really know their place within that, I think what you did was brought in a structure really where you can see the leader, you can see the follower, you can see the one clear message within that. This is Wayne's team and he's the leader, and you get cohesion from that, you get clarity from that as well. But I think the other thing you did in that was instill a leader who is really a top leader in Wayne Rooney. Someone, I think when I first thought of the idea of Wayne becoming a manager, I think with a lot of people as well, he didn't seem like the type. He didn't, for whatever reason, I can't put my finger on it exactly. I didn't have much confidence in him doing it, but he surprised me. He's proven me wrong and a lot of people wrong. He's been a fantastic manager. What is it about him, and what has he done at Derby that is so good? What is his character? Is it his, I guess, his simplicity and his leadership? What is it exactly?
It's all of that. He was a leader by example. He was a leader, but not a loud, shouty one as a player. Though he could do that. You could get into an argument with Wayne, no problem. But I think it's something in which we've talked a lot about the culture at Manchester United. And this is where he's very, very close with the gaffer in terms of that. One of the values and main values is honesty, and how he delivers that honesty. It can be a hairdryer, but not often. But it can be also a humble, brutal honesty, if that makes sense. And I think in the modern day, with a modern player, that's what they appreciated, was that, you know, he could deliver the bad news to players. He could be very honest. You don't run, you don't play. You don't do this, you don't play. You don't do that, you're not in the squad. You don't. And he was very, very onto that. And that was one of his main values that he carried on through. And everyone came to accept that. He had the respect, of course he did. And the key thing was that he played to his strengths. And he allowed, and this is also key, he allowed the other coaches to do their job.
Yeah.
And he trusted in Liam, in Justin, in Shay, Jason, who was the goalkeeping coach. He trusted in them, built up a great relationship. And what he's done is I've seen him grow and grow and grow over the last year and a half, to the extreme that he had a great lesson at the end of the first season, just stayed up on the last day. And I remember that was a pivotal moment, because his speech before the game, and he used emotion, and it's similar to the gaffer. In the gaffer's team talks, we used emotion, and Wayne uses emotion, a reason to play, why you pull the shirt on, why you have to play for each other, why you have to go out there for the fans. And he got Philomena, who's one of the girls in the canteen, who's been there for donkey's years, fantastic woman, Derby through and through, been through a lot, and always there and always positive. And he got her to come in and do a little speech in front of the boys. And adding to that, Davo, the kit man, who's been there also years and years, also felt moved to get up in front of the boys and speak honestly and wholeheartedly. And that, you kind of knew after that, you're going into the game against Sheffield Wednesday, that, you know what, we're going to get out of this. We're going to get out of this and stay up. And so it proved.
Yeah.
But what he did the next season was really pivotal to his success and how he's built Derby County.
Can I just say the three things there? I think in Wayne as a manager probably sums up exactly what he does, is that honesty in his messaging, that simplicity in how he communicates it, and then the structure of a narrative as well to kind of fuel all of that. I think one of the things, what exemplifies that is his comments after they were relegated and talking about Mel Morris and, you know, I hope he doesn't sleep tonight. He really, and whether he means it or not, he probably believes it, but I think he built a real narrative out of the situation. And that's such a big thing for motivation. I think for anyone, for a person, for a team, is to build a story and a narrative around yourself. It helps you sustain that motivation. So in that sense, you're the protagonist, and who's your antagonist, and what's the obstacle that you're trying to overcome. And in the sense of Derby, it was the protagonist being the young players, being, you know, the Dinleys, being the kit man. The antagonist, whether right or wrong, the narrative is Mel Morris, the antagonist. And then the obstacle, the 21-point deduction, the thing they have to try and overcome. And I think he, by the sounds of it, and from what I've seen and heard, he's kind of sold that narrative really well. And like you said, emotion, he's put a lot of emotion into that as well. And I think it's given the team a lot of simplicity in, right, we're doing this for the fans, we're doing this for the club, we're doing it because of he did this to us, because we're under this situation. And it provides a real clarity where, and you've seen it, there's a real lack of hope really in the situation they're in, but they still fought consistently throughout the season. So I think there's a real lesson there for any manager, and to learn that from Wayne is, I think, the details of the game. Anyone can understand football, and it's people have PhDs. It's a simple game, but to communicate that to people, to create narrative and a structure, and to motivate people is the real talent. And it's one that Rooney clearly has, and one that's benefited Derby quite a lot.
Well, the breakthrough moment and the defining moment of the season, and probably in Wayne's career in going forward as the manager, was when Mel relinquished control, came into the canteen. All the staff, all the players, all the academy, everybody was in the canteen, and Mel delivered a speech as to why the club had to go into administration. And he just took the reins then. Mel went out, told us everybody to stay, and he used that situation, and he was angry, as everybody was angry in that room. Really, really angry. There was anger and real emotion and real, I got to say, Mel did well to want to deliver a speech, and two, to get out of the club.
Yeah.
And he just came to the front and just said, right, a few words about Mel, just couldn't go into, but he said, we're in administration, jobs are at risk, jobs are at stake. We understand that, but I guarantee that whoever takes over the club, when they take over, anybody who loses their job and wants it back, I will give them their job back through the new owners coming in. And it was a speech like that drew everybody in, that commanded respect, that established that respect. And that day, he became a leader. I remember thinking, wow, now you're a leader. People will follow him because they want to, not because they have to.
Yeah.
And there's a massive difference.
Massive difference.
Massive difference. Yeah. And you could see it. You could see it in the place. And the performances from then went, through the roof. And the players have fought, ran for each other like I've seen no other club. And what he established at the beginning of the season, what he'd learned from last season, and it's something that frustrated him in the first season. He came back in pre-season and established a way of playing, the Derby way of playing. He established that. And I remember Liam having a conversation with Liam very early on and talking about this way of playing and using the 5 lanes and 5 up top and building up like this. And they started pre-season like this. And by the end of pre-season, they were playing wonderful football. They were controlling the game last season, but this season, they've controlled the game with the ball and without the ball, if that makes sense. They've been comfortable in and out. And the key has been the possession. And he has got the likes of Ryan Alsop, the goalkeeper. They have a different way of playing. Anybody who wants to study it and the tactics and the build-up and how he does it, it really is revolutionary. And I haven't seen it, but he's got it off to a T. And he's got the likes of Stearman and Curtis Davis. He's brought in young boy Cashin. He's got him playing football from the back. He's got Ryan Alsop, Case Keller Roos before that. being the third centre-back and delivering long through passes over the defence. So the build-up from the back has been fantastic. His use of fullbacks, his use of the midfield, his rotations, the way he's handled Ravel Morrison, Tom Lawrence, gave them responsibility, and Tom Lawrence especially really taking it, the captaincy, and going on from that. Max Bird delivering unbelievable performances. But he's played teams, he's put kids in there, he's put 16-year-old kids in, and he's put Luke Plange as a centre forward who had just joined in the summer. It was great recruitment. And he was just a young boy, great talent, but I thought, well, we're not ready. And he put him in and he trusted him. And he's delivered. Thompson, Cashin, Festi, who was not even getting in the under-23s, wasn't. Malcolm, we just signed in January from Rangers on a free, got released, was going off into the wilderness. He's come in, and I watched him. He was the best player on the field on Saturday. So it's not just with established, experienced players, but it's with young players. And the performances from the young players have been absolutely exceptional. And that's created by his culture. And the coaches have created that as well. And Liam takes also a lot of great credit. As always, it's not about the number one, it's about the people around him. He's got good people. He's got good analysts in Ben and Pete. He's got good in sports science in Luke. Good medical team with John. The injuries have been so low. And he's got good leadership on the field with Curtis Davis, Tom Lawrence experience, but they've brought the youth. So the balance has been fantastic. He's become a leader. His messages have improved so much from day one, and especially this season after that incident in the canteen. His messages to the players, to the staff, and to the media have really hit the fans, and his message to the fans. So it really, it's that honesty. It's that trust in his staff, trust in the players. And he's playing teams and players that should not get results, that shouldn't get results. But they're not just getting results, but they're doing it in such a great way of playing football.
Is he getting those performances from those young players, like you said there? And I thought about it in my kind of philosophy and what I think of psychology and how much importance the culture is, the interaction of the people. Is that how he's got that performance, those performances out of those young players? Has he instilled that confidence in them to, play their game? Essentially, my question is really, how has he done it? How has he got young players playing so well and with such confidence?
Because his training's good. It's intense, it's competitive. And he's simple. You talked about it earlier. He's simple in his messages. And he's demanding, very demanding. And the players have just bought in. And, you're never too old to learn. I have learned so much in the last 18 months, overseeing it, looking from afar now because of the administration, to seeing him really galvanise and go on his own. I've learned so much. And the biggest lesson is give kids a chance. Give them a chance in training, because many he gave in training and they didn't perform in training and he threw them out. They threw them back. And Festi was a good example of that. 2 or 3 times he threw him back to the 23s. But Festi fought and got back in. And fought and got back in. And eventually, he's going to Udinese, I think. What a move he's got from just, the 6, 7, 8 months he's had in the first team. So it's that trust, that honesty, delivering that honesty in the right way. but making sure every day, every player does their job. And it reminds me a lot of the Manchester United culture, and everybody coming to work every day. We're here. We're going to enjoy training. We're going to enjoy each other, and we're going to enjoy what the coach has instilled in us. And they're actually coming out, and they love the football that they're playing. The dressing rooms are unique.
Yeah,
are unique when they've won a game, and it really is, and it's just a shame they're 21 points. Otherwise, Wayne would have built and built again in the Championship. But Derby will be great again. And their first division, they've got to start from there. Other big clubs have done it, and they'll do it.
So I think you kind of touched on it there. Again, what the future of Derby County, the kind of the behind the scenes of it, I don't understand too much. But what are your kind of thoughts on the future of Derby County? Are they in a good place now to be pushing on from League One, to be going forward, to be going up, especially under Wayne Rooney as well?
That depends on the owner.
Yeah.
And that is key to it, as it always has been right the way along. Ownership is the key. And the new owner, and Kirshner's come in, preferred bidder. He has an opportunity over the next 6 weeks. He's in the club. He's liaising with Wayne. And the key thing that number one, Kirshner must do is keep Wayne. To keep Wayne, he's got to provide funds. Firstly, funds to avoid 15-point deduction next season if he doesn't pay this 25p in the pound for all the football creditors, or he pays 35p over 3 years. That's important. You do not want to be in that first division next season with a deduction of 15 points. So that's important that Kirshner does that. It's important that if Wayne stays, that he keeps the players that he's got already. The message I got was that they all want to stay. They all want to fight for the cause because it has been that strong. And Kirshner must provide funds for the future to build on what they've built last season. So I imagine, and I've said to Wayne plenty of times, wow, if you really recruit well, improve the talent with the same cause and fight that they've got, and the same football, the philosophy, that many teams, I haven't seen one team who has worked out how Derby play this season in terms of their possession, how to press. Derby have always found a way to dominate. And if they don't dominate, they control the game without the ball. I haven't seen an opponent yet who has worked that out. And he's got to continue that. If he brings in better players, then that's great. But the funds also must be there for players, but also must be there for staff. A lot of staff have gone from the club. They've moved on. And he's got to improve facilities because, there was recovery is important. We didn't have the swim little pool, which Mel had put in, that had been turned off. Ice baths turned off. And they were put on by Kirshner late on. That needs, so facilities needs to get this club back. And it's important that in the summer, Kirshner comes out with his vision and goals for the club. Short term, medium term, long term. What's he going to do? What does he want? What's his vision for the first team? What's his vision for the academy? What's his vision short term for next season? And then what's his vision for the next 5 years? That is what he's got to sell and be consistent in and aligned to.
Just going from a team there that are definitely facing relegation to another team that on the brink of that, quite interestingly, in a more fortunate position in Derby, but nonetheless in that relegation zone and in that relegation fight. You watched the Liverpool-Everton game quite recently. What was your analysis of that game? It's always different in a derby like that. But what was your assessment of the game as a whole?
Yeah, I think, basically it would be good to talk through the problems that they've got, but also to talk about the structure. When we talk about Derby, the structure that they need, and we're talking about Everton, and we'll probably talk about the structure that they've got and possibly where their weakness has been. And no doubt you've got that. But basically, the game against Liverpool, they fought. And I thought, Liverpool were running out of options. Concentration, focus, fight for each other, fight for the cause was there. One or two moments were very effective. And unfortunately, Liverpool, the squad, the bench, just overran them. And it was difficult to maintain that for 90 minutes. Again, defining moments in the game. Young boy Gordon could have gone down, went down, looked a penalty, wasn't given, I don't think even looked at. And unfortunately, that moment cost them the game. Mm. Now, the key is what they're going to do for the rest of the games, because they're in danger of going down.
We discussed it a few episodes ago. For people that don't know, we have the audio as well. You can listen to that on Spotify and Apple and Google. But we talked about it towards, I think, the end of the January transfer window. And we had a bit of a critique of Everton then, because the situation wasn't looking great then either, but looking worse now. And we discussed that of Van der Beek and Dele Alli coming in. I think we kind of proven right in the sense that the recruitment hasn't been great there. And I find now the recruitment is probably the most important thing. The players that you're bringing in, I find that so important. Probably the most important. Is that kind of evidence of that?
I think you're right in one way, Josh. Absolutely. But I also think that players and recruitment is important. Mm. So recruitment has to match the way that you play, the environment. Mm. So what we're saying sometimes is that players coming out of London, going up to the northeast, Newcastle, or over to Liverpool, Everton, or any other northern team, Leeds, might find it difficult to adjust, like northern players sometimes difficult to adjust in London. So the environment has to be right. But if you get everything right in terms of recruitment, the manager shows that he wants that player, loves that player, wants him in. He has a philosophy and a reason why he's come in, and he buys into that wholeheartedly. He settles down in the area, he's content, he's in a safe environment, and he comes in every day looking forward to training. Then you can turn a player around from being a bad player in one club to all of a sudden a good player in another. Yeah. And I often say to players in a 15, sometimes 20 year, 15 to 20 year career, you will find a home, if you're lucky, 3 times. If you're lucky, 3 times. Some stay, like at Manchester United, Giggs and Neville's, one club, one time, they found the home and never left. But it really is. And everything comes together for you to feel comfortable and deliver performances that you can. So, the Dele Alli had that at NK Dons. He had that when he went to Spurs. Pochettino loved him, got him in a system, playing with Kane, playing with this, playing with that. And the environment, everything around was great, was fantastic. Changed the manager, other managers come in, found that he was so-and-so, 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 and he's not gelled with other managers. And it's so important. So you can imagine at Everton, if you're bringing players in and you keep changing the manager, and you start off the season with Benitez, and last season you had Ancelotti, and then somebody else, and then you had a caretaker, then another one. Unfortunately, not every player will get on with every manager. When you do, and you get that connection, real connection, which Ali had with Pochettino, you thrive.
Yeah.
If you don't get a connection, and I think, it was evident in the Amazon documentary of Mourinho criticizing Dele Alli for his attitude in training. If you don't get that connection, then you're gone.
Yeah.
Then you have no trust. You have no faith in yourself. He doesn't have faith in me. And I think, that happens everywhere. It's not just happening at Everton. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
To every player. Not every player in that 25-man squad, believe you me, is happy.
Yeah.
He's happy. Some who feel safe, part of the squad, great. If you're not loved or wanted by the manager, you feel like an outsider.
Yeah.
And unfortunately at Everton, that's what's been created.
Yeah. I think you touched on it there. The structure of Everton is so interesting. The stats here in regards to what the behind the scenes was after the end of the 2017-2018 season, they've had 3 directors of football in place since then. The person who's in charge for the long-term project of the club, within 3 seasons, 3 different directors of football. And I think that kind of speaks for itself with the structure of things. Within that, also 4 different managers as well. But I think the Dele Alli situation kind of epitomizes the problems. I think, like you said, yeah, it's recruitment. I think recruitment is important, but you can change players, and you can see that Dele Alli has not really changed at all from the situation. But also in recruitment as well, when you recruit players, you ask around about what the players like and what the situations are like. And in that case, you have a video on YouTube. You can go on Amazon Prime, you go on whatever. You can see the meeting that he has with Mourinho, when Mourinho is saying you've got to start providing, you've got to start performing. You only got one chance. You really got to do this. And then you watch as he does not do anything about it. And then I don't know how, as a side, you go, oh, that's the player I want. And you think we're going to fix that player. You can't. Surely you don't think you can fix it or change that player. We haven't got a great structure in place. I think another thing as well was, in terms of managers, you're recruiting managers as well. And I don't have anything particularly against Frank Lampard, and he did a good job at Chelsea. But say with Newcastle, for example, they're in a situation, a relegation battle, and great recruitment with the players, by the way, but with the manager as well, getting a manager in who has performed well at the bottom half of the table, who knows how to get out of relegation battles. And if you're Everton, Frank Lampard, he just does not have that experience of being a manager in that situation, handling those players and handling that messy situation. He's handled Derby, who are going for promotion, in which everything's going well. He's managed Chelsea as well. Yes, they've had problems, but in his kind of similar vein, they've faced problems that has kind of brought unity. He's got young lads. He's done a good job. I'm not saying he hasn't, but then you put him in a situation at Everton, and I feel bad for him in that sense, because he's not had that experience before. He's not been that fighter, and that's not his fault. And it's something we'll touch on, because there's so much talk around the recruiting of managers. Say with Manchester United, the recruitment of Ten Hag and how important that is. But for me, it's starting to be less so important, because there's such big influence behind the scene. Like I said, they're directors of football, 3 different ones. And really that's the role now that's forming. It's probably the most important above the manager. And you can see really that's where the problems are. It doesn't matter if the manager comes in, or hopefully they make the right choice. But really the long-term success of a club is being determined now by figures above the manager, and kind of one sole figure in a technical director or whatever you want to call it. So I think really Everton's a great example of that, but also of something we talked about there when you went into Derby, and they have 4 different coaches and they don't know the structure, don't know the hierarchy of it. And you go in there and say, right, Wayne's in charge, you follow Wayne. And kind of in that sense, in Everton, it seems like every few months that's changing all the time. You'd imagine from that there's probably conflict all the time behind the scenes as well. And you can see how that affects the performances on the pitch. I mean, it's interesting because we were talking about how much Everton have spent, and I've got the stats here. I've got everything on my computer today. But the stats, I think, from February 2022, with regards to net spend over the past 10 years, and Everton are 8th on that list with 429 million euros. And take that into comparison against the team they just played in Liverpool, who have a net spend of 347 million. And I think the contrast, it's an interesting table to look at, because you think money informs the performance of teams. And really, you probably expect a league table to look exactly the same as the table of net spend over the past whatever years. But the reality is, you see teams higher in the league who, yes, have money, but really have structure. Liverpool is a fantastic example of that. They only have so much money, and that's why I say recruitment is important, because I think the recruitment at Liverpool has been unbelievable, really. For example, and this is again another example where, yes, Klopp's a fantastic manager. That's what's made them so good as well. But say with Salah, for example, he wasn't Klopp's choice. Mo Salah, he didn't really fancy him that much. And really, the recruitment behind the scenes, that's in charge of that process, and they recruit really great players. Of course, Klopp has his advice in that as well. But it's evident there's a really good structure in place at Liverpool. They've kept a manager in for a long time. They have people in place behind the scenes for a long time, and they've built success from that. And that really contrasts to Everton and their situation, where they've spent more, but they evidently don't have that cohesion. They don't have that structure. They don't have that hierarchy behind the scenes, behind the coaching staff, behind the players, the people above all that. I think that's really lacking. And you see how that affects the performances on the pitch over a long period of time.
Yeah, I think we talk about ownership, and we talk about, what's a good club, bad club, and with Kirshner now taking over from Derby, and what does he need to do? And then we had the transfer forum last week, as I say, at Old Trafford, with a lot of recruitment people, scouts, agents coming together, and technical directors. And we were talking, the subject was, what's the perfect structure? What is the ideal structure of a football club? There isn't one.
Yeah.
There isn't one, because everyone's different. Everything's different, and everybody has to adapt to different things. And so I reflected on that, and I reflected on that because thinking of Kirshner coming in at Derby, and also you talked about Everton, and I thought, well, what is a good structure? And the key, and Joe, who has been head of recruitment at Derby County, has just been and still is doing a technical director's course through the FA, and learning a little bit about that the structures really is about having ownership. The structure is the key, is ownership. They must have vision, they must have goals, and they must provide the funds and wherewithals for the club to succeed in that vision and attain their goals. But he must know what his club looks like, feels like, what that team looks like, feels like, what it plays like, what the fans, what messages he wants. And then you have behind him, or underneath, is a CEO who controls the funds.
Yeah. They
could, because owners can go mad. I want one striker. I'll buy you two. I'll buy you three. No. The CEO's responsibility is to control the funds, keep it legal, because look, the problems that Derby have had through, it's, and within budget, otherwise you get into trouble, as is seen. And then you come into the football side, and that's the TD, that's the technical director of football, whatever you like to say. And his responsibilities are the football side as a whole. I listened to a great podcast with Dan Ashworth the other month, talking about the 7 spokes of the wheel.
That's what I was thinking.
He's in the middle. And his responsibility is delivering that vision for the owner.
Yeah.
Through the CEO delivering budget, so the owner can achieve what he wants to, and it's his responsibility.
Yeah.
Now his responsibility is, as well as first team, overseeing that, is the academy, is the recruitment, is the sports science, is the analytics, is the messages to the media, to the players, to the manager as well. So his responsibilities are for the club in general. And now in today's modern football is the head coach, whose responsibility is results on the field.
Yeah,
that's it. That we talked about Paul Simpson, didn't we, a few weeks ago?
Yeah.
What are you doing? All I'm focusing on, not the academy, not this, not that, not the other, results on the field. And that's what you want. That's the responsibility of the head coach. The bigger picture, leave that to the technical director.
Yeah.
The smaller picture. And he's responsible for results on the field. He's responsible for the development of the potential within that squad on the field. Whether the owner wants a business and wants to sell players through academy, so he's got the blood young players, he's got to see that he's developing players throughout the club for first team to sell. And he's got to function with the support of the staff. So he's in charge of that area. But they're the four fundamentals. But the key is, and Joe gave it to me the other week, the key is alignment. If them four important people are not aligned in a football club, then you get mixed messages.
Yeah.
And then you get chaos.
Yeah.
And then you don't know. And then you get the TD leaving because of mixed message. Then you get another one coming in and it's a new message. And then you get another one, it's a new message. And then all of a sudden you're going for this and it's different from the owner. Alignment is the key. The top clubs have it. And generally, not a lot of people, and I always often say the most important thing in a football club is that first team on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
I know it's Sundays and Tuesdays now, but we call it that Saturday after. They, on them 11 players on the field, are the most important people in that football club. They deliver the results for them to thrive.
Yeah.
And so the messages must be aligned. When you don't get alignment, you get chaos.
And I think those leaders bring that alignment through what you said there, through having that vision. And I think that vision is really, again, what we touched on before, is narrative, is story, is this is the direction that we're going in. And so you get that alignment from different areas within the club when they all have that same vision and share that same vision and all feel a part of it. And that extends also to the pitch as well. And I think when you look at teams like Everton, it's interesting, and they don't. I think if you're a player, you don't see where you fit in. You don't see the narrative. You don't see, what the story is and what you're working towards. You don't have that confidence or that motivation from it. So I think that's kind of quite interesting for Everton specifically. That's the situation I feel that they're in is without that structure behind the scenes, they lack that kind of vision going forward. And with that, the players of Everton don't really have that kind of motivation to play, because I think when it comes to that, you have players that are then saying, and it's a big thing within a club, within a team for me, is players taking responsibility and trying to enforce that. And I think it's easy for players to slip out of that when they're in tough situation with the club and they don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And I think the first thing to do is to instill that kind of ownership of your performances. But it's very easy to do that in a position you're in at Everton, say. It's very easy to not take that ownership and therefore not give those performances and then look like as if you don't care. Or to be fair, against Liverpool, they did. But again, that's what I mean about narrative, is a Liverpool-Everton game, a rivalry, a derby, and you see it in derby games, performances and attention goes up completely because of that narrative, because of that simple story. And it really, really pushes players to do things. What Everton need is that cohesion. Whether they can do it in time to avoid relegation, I'm not so sure, but I think that's what they need.
I agree. And it's an experience for Frank that he has to go through. Wayne went through it last season. Had to, avoid defeat against Sheffield Wednesday to stay up. It was an unbelievable day. he did that, and he's moved on from that enormously. And Frank has to do the same in this situation. So good luck to him. I admire him as a player. I admired what he did at Derby, to a certain degree at Chelsea. This is a tough job. He has to come through it.
Well, thanks, Dad, again for another really interesting conversation. I think the conversation overall there being about how important narrative and structure is behind the scenes of clubs. I mean, with regards to Derby, I think what Wayne's done is fantastic in kind of being that leader, that focal point where everyone's come around that narrative and that story and come together and have become a better club, and the fan base have got behind that because of it. And in the case of Everton, almost the opposite, where the structure within that club isn't there. The changing of technical directors over the so many seasons, and it's so interesting to see how that in the long term has affected the performances on the pitch, and how with that the players have no real incentive, no real narrative to push and fight other than when they're in a derby fight against their rivals Liverpool. So yeah, a really interesting conversation about the behind the scenes of the football, especially with Derby and what's going on there. But for me, the importance of psychology, the importance of culture and environment to how these teams perform despite the money or the lack of money that they have. So yeah, thank you again for listening and watching, and I'll see you again next week.
This is McClaren Performance.